welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm your host, Ted Bannock, and I love talking about couples for Couples February.
And I think that there's just a couple of us here tonight. Unfortunately, Grant had to cut out early in our recording session, so it's just a couple of us talking about a couple of cards.
Just a couple of us talking about a couple of cards.
But before we talk about a couple of cards, Ted,
do you want to do something like thank our patrons? Because we are thankful to them.
We are. So it's a couple between Card Talk and the patrons, right? So
a couple of thanks between a couple of dudes.
Right. Or dudettes.
Or dudettes.
Right. But I would like to specifically shout out Daniel, David, Jason, Joseph, Kyle, Lewis, Mike, Dominic, Phil, Rob, Robert, and Sean this time around. It's because of awesome support from viewers like you that we are able to do the amazing, awesome things that we do for you on this show. And specifically this week, I just wanted to talk about Lewis. I don't think I brought up Lewis, but Lewis out there, we played, Ted, you and I, when we played at Con of the Rings, Lewis was one of the dudes that we played against at Con of the Rings when we played the competitive mode. It was in the first game of competitive that we ever played. So that was pretty awesome. So Lewis,
you're mean Lord of the Rings player.
He is a tough opponent. And while this episode isn't about tactics, Legolas, it will be just for you, Lewis. So thanks a lot. Ted, it is Couples February, so do you want to introduce the specific couple that we are going to talk about in this episode?
Yes. Most of the couples we do for Couples February have been romantic couples or couples in real life, but this time we have a couple of just they're related folk. Today we're going to be talking about Theoden and Theodred, as they are just father and son in that coupleness.
And I mean, come on, you know that when Theodred was little, Theoden was putting little Valentines in his on his pillow at night when he, I'm sure he loved his son.
Yeah, that's true. Your parents are the first Valentines, right?
Right. I think it's important to note that that those sorts of relationships are important, and that's why we call it Couples February and not necessarily Romantic Interest February, because that would make this episode weird.
Yes, it would.
And it would probably make some of our other episodes weird, knowing what other episodes we have coming up.
Yeah, but so today we're going to talk about those two cards. Theodred, of course, has his leadership version, which I'll just go ahead and rattle off right now. As a reminder, he's a 8 threat leadership hero with 1 willpower, 2 attack, 1 defense, 4 hit points. He is traded Noble Rohan Warrior. He has a response that reads, after Theodred commits to a quest, choose a hero committed to that quest, add 1 resource to that hero's resource pool. And then, David, why don't you go ahead and read off Spirit Theoden?
All right, so Spirit Theoden. Well, actually, we're going to pick Spirit Theoden because Tactics Theoden really doesn't have much interaction with Theodred at all. So it's almost like they were developed separately. So that's why we chose Spirit Theoden. But Spirit Theoden is a 12 threat cost spirit hero. He is a Rohan noble and a warrior, which could be important. He's got 2 willpower, 3 attack, and 2 defense, and 4 big ol' hit points, and Sentinel, which comes in handy in this game when you're playing multiplayer, like I do all the freaking time. And then every day of my life I play this game multiplayer. And then probably the important part of Spirit Theoden is you get to reduce the cost of the first Rohan ally you play from your hand by 1, and that's to a minimum of 0. And that is important because a lot of times when you're reducing the minimums in this game, it's always down to 1, it seems like. There's a lot of reduced to a minimum of 1. But this one you're allowed to bring in somebody for free as long as you have the sphere match. So, yeah, so Ted, have at it, buddy.
This couple, let me tell you, they are, thematic to play together. They're both Rohan traded, so I think really what today's episode will focus on is just that it's really gonna focus around one way to build the Rohan archetype with these two heroes, because Rohan archetype comes in lots of flavors, right, David?
That's what. Yeah, I was gonna say there's probably Rohan and Gondor are the two archetype decks that can just be played about 10 billion different ways, it seems like. So
yeah, because so many different heroes that can use the cards around those archetypes,
right.
But I'd say that Spirit Theoden is definitely one of the linchpins of that archetype, because his ability just really fuels putting allies into play, and it's important because the Rohan archetype is good at getting rid of your allies. You get them on the table, and away they go. So reducing their cost as much as possible is pretty big.
Yeah, and I think that this is probably these two heroes together. You get to add the 1 to Theoden's resource pool, and then from Theodred is the when he commits to the quest, you get to add the 1 to Theoden's resource pool, and then that gives him 2 for the next round. And I think that that's the big deal. 2 seems to be the magic number for getting that Rohan archetype up and running, which is triggered kind of like by gambling. Gambling's a 3-cost spirit ally that when you discard a Rohan from play, you get to return it to your hand. Gambling gets to bring it back to your hand. And so there's been a bunch of times when I've taken Escort from Edoras, which is the thing that quests for 4. It has 2 willpower, but when you exhaust it, it gets +2 and then it gets discarded. This is one of those things that you can quest for 4 reliably if you have gambling out, and then the Escort from Edoras, and then you're paying 1 for the escort, but you're really paying 0 because Theodred's giving the resource to him, so to his dad. So I think that's one way to get this thing up and running, at least for questing. And so that's how I've been able to get this archetype kind of rolling.
Yeah, that's a good point. Essentially, with these two heroes, you get, no matter who your third hero is, you put to make the thruple.
The thruple.
You essentially get 5 resources a turn, and then access to both spirit and leadership, which are immensely powerful. Because with spirit comes, all the great things within spirit: cancellation, unexpected courage. You get a couple cards though that work specifically with these two as well. Heir of Mardil is really fantastic to work with Theodred. Heir of Mardil, of course, is a 1-cost leadership attachment that goes on a noble, and when you gain a resource, you get to ready that character. So you can put Heir of Mardil either on Theodred, and his response, you can give himself the resource and then ready him, or you can put it also on Theoden, and then he can get a ready out of it. And he's got a pretty good stat line, being Sentinel, 3 attack, 2 willpower.
Yeah, I know that this is probably going to shake you to your core when I ask this, but is this Rohan deck that is bringing out allies for cheaper? Is this a solo deck, or is it strictly a multi-deck fellowship sort of thing?
Good question. It would depend again on who your third hero is, but because you could, I don't know. I would struggle to build a solo deck with these two heroes. You certainly can get action advantage with the right attachments, because Theoden also has Snowmane, which is a spirit mount, which essentially uh, lets you quest and then ready. And that or Mardel, unexpected courage. You have lots of ways to ready your heroes, and then you have lots of resources to also get allies in the table. So it's quite possible if you had a good defender. But then if you have a good defender as your last hero, like say Baragon, you're going to struggle with willpower in the first turn, having 3. you know. Uh, but even with 2 spirit heroes, first turn you can get a 3-cost Rohan ally out because you only pay 2.
Right.
And most of those will have 2 willpower. So first turn you could probably more than likely get up to 5 without any other tricks.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think the hero that you couple with this to make the thruple, as you say, I feel like should be Spirit Eowyn. Just because these two guys are gonna, Theoden and Theodred are gonna be tough in terms of finding enough willpower, like you said, and then Spirit Eowyn really helps out. And then the other thing about using Spirit Eowyn with this build is that there's going to be a lot of unique allies. And so to be able to pitch unique allies to Spirit Eowyn and make use of those cards kind of as, another pseudo resource is going to probably be really good. But that said, I think that...
I think that is a great idea. So if you're looking for a really great support deck, if you're going 2-player, multiplayer, I think that'll have a real strong place, because a lot of great things with Spirit. And even in multiplayer, if you're like, okay, I'm going to run leadership and not run steward, right? In multiplayer, someone else might be using it. Theodred's giving you 1 extra resource a turn, and that can be a lot to build a strong board of all these Rohan allies that there's, a dozen different kinds that we could go through and name.
Right. And like Spirit Eowyn may be the best, but Tactics Eowyn also helps out because there is in this build a couple of tactics things that go, like the Golden Shield and things like that.
Yeah, so one potential way is to build it with Tactics Eowyn, and the Golden Shield is a 1-cost Tactics attachment, which lets you put on a Rohan character that can add their willpower to their defense for 1 attack. So Tactics Eowyn she can become a real strong defender. I mean, she'll go to 5 with that 1 attachment. That ain't too, that
ain't too shabby, right?
For willpower and reducing your threat further. You'll start with 18, 24 threat, I think.
Right, which is really
with that lineup with Tactics Eowyn,
right?
Spirit Theoden and Theoden. That's okay.
That's decent.
But
I think that when you're talking about just the couple, Theoden and Theodred, I think it's interesting, first of all, that these two seem to go so well together. Let me back off that for a second. They go well together in terms of they seem to synergize well together. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
you can pseudo reduce the cost of an ally by 2 every round, which is great. And then I think it's also interesting that there are different spheres. And then, like the sphere that you want all the stuff is going to be in Spirit for this particular thing. So it's nice that, it's nice that, but the problem is that how many times is Theoden going to be the one that's questing? Maybe at the beginning, but then.
Well, if you have Snowmane out, he'll be questing every turn, ideally.
Right.
But right, he's also got 3 attack and 2 in Sentinel. But you're right; they synergize very well because you have access to pretty great weapons to boost attack. Because you have Hairgrim, which is a spirit weapon for Rohan that gets reduced to play on Theoden. And if you're playing leadership, you also have Guthwin, which is a 2-cost leadership weapon that gives you +2 attack, also for Rohan hero.
Right.
So
and that usually goes on leadership armor. Well, it doesn't have to go on leadership armor, but I always feel like that's usually the really good target for that weapon. But it doesn't have to, right? So that's
you again you put either Snowmane or Aramardel on either one of these characters, and then you get Hairgrim or Guthwin out. That's a couple cards. I'm talking about comboing but it's any combination, right? You could put all of them in your deck, and you just need to pull out the right combination. Any of them can mix together to be good, or you put Hairgrim and Guthwin on one character, and that's just your main attacker. And you have someone attacking for like 7.
right.
Theodred will attack for, they'll just crush something. So there's a lot of good support for this trait.
Right, and that's the thing that I think is really interesting. Like, so we were talking about gambling with this. So gambling again is the unique leadership. He's the unique spirit ally that that allows the kind of the Rohan discard machine to be really good, because you can exhaust him, and he doesn't have like a bunch of stats that you feel guilty about exhausting him with. But then you can pick so many other, you can pick some really good targets. Like I was saying, Escort of Edoras, if you want to quest, because the Escort of Edoras is questing for 4, and then you can use that for free every round. But if you need to defend, Hama is defending for 5 every round, and and then you can discard him, and then bring him back and pay. I'll say a pseudo one. You're going to pay 2 for him, but you've already contributed 1 resource to somebody else using Theodred. So, so there's a lot of ways to get this guy, to get this couple up and going, right? Like, it seems like this is, if you're gonna play that archetype, the Rohan discard, bring back to life, discard, bring back to life. This is the thing to do, right?
It's got the strength of, even though you're starting off kind of with smaller stat line, right? Like I know some people complain about Theodred because he's like, his ability revolves around him questing, and he's only got 1 willpower. you know but you, off the bat, you immediately have like whatever you have in your hand. If it's an ally, you can afford it. You don't have to really. We mentioned a lot of great cards that you can combo, but again, all those allies you mentioned, Hama, Escort from Edoras, there's the Horse Breeder.
Aemond is really good, because you can have Aemond, you can chump with him, and then all of a sudden everybody's ready again, and then you can use gambling again and bring another person back in your, because gambling's response isn't done. So I mean, like, there's a way to continue recycling these guys, but that engine takes a little while to set up. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just was excited. Here.
Right. And the thing is, like, as long as what's in your hand are allies, you put a decent amount of allies in your deck, you can you're not waiting to like, if I just draw Steward of Gondor, I'll have the resources to afford this 5. Like, you don't need that here. You just have it. You're like, I get 5 resources essentially. If you're playing a Rohan ally, you get 4 resources plus reduce the cost by 1.
Right.
And that just will help you build a board state from turn 1.
Right. The other option here that I want to bring up, and this is me channeling my inner Grant, who is always just along for the ride, is that now you
horse ride,
right?
The Rohan.
If you choose Dunhir as your 3rd hero, first of all, Dunhir is Rohan. He's also in Sphere. He's Spirit. I don't know what I mean by in Sphere, but he's his own sphere, right? No, but like, I mean, he's in that. He's not like lore.
Dune Sphere?
Dune Sphere? Right, Dune Sphere. But I mean, the thing is that, you can now develop maybe even a pretty good, what do I want to say? A pretty good attacking the staging area, because the Challenge of the Wain Riders just came out with this Rohirrim Scout. I don't even know if you know about it, but you get to discard the Rohirrim Scout. Like, that's its action. You get to discard it to have a non-unique enemy not make an engagement check against you. So if
Mm.
you build up Done Here with said attachments, because you're dealing with leadership, which has all the marks and the stuff like that to build up his attack. You have a hair grant, whatever you want to put on Dune here to get his attack way up. You could even keep things in the staging area that would be pretty good, because Dune here gets a and his threat is also pretty low.
Yeah, he's also just 8.
Yeah.
So that lineup is 28, right? 16, 8, 8, and 12.
8,
Can
8,
I do
and 8, 8, and 12 is 28, right?
Yeah.
So that, I mean, so there's that, and I think that that's the other maybe likely type of, I don't know, Rohan deck is attack in the staging area. I want to say that mounts is also a Rohan thing because of the lore of the game, but I also feel like a mount deck doesn't necessarily get up and going very well, right? Mounts only make things like a little bit better for people, right?
Yeah, it's the Rohan mount deck. That's what's great about this archetype is there's a couple different ways to build it, because you have not only 2 versions of Eowyn, you have 2 versions of Eomer, 2 versions of Theodred, or Theoden plus Theodred. So there's quite a few, and that's just sort of another way to flavor the deck. Is with mounts, and Elfhelm does that really well, but I don't think he fits here. You know, because you're boosting Theodred's defense by putting a mount on him with Elfhelm, and he's just not going to be defending.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to go, but I think that if you start with these 2, you have a good foundation. Like no matter which way you go,
right? And that's, I guess, what I'm trying to get. What I'm trying to get at is that this is it's pretty good. It's pretty good to start with this couple. I think that you can't go wrong. Well, what do I do with all these Sylvan elves in my Rohan deck? But like
my deck is all lower attachments. How?
right. But I will also say that I think that one of the cards that I specifically love from the core set. This is a shout out to all the new and kind of casual players out there that will really help is the Snowborn Scout. Like that Snowborn Scout. Like it only costs 1, and to be able to put 1 progress on a location, like that's pretty good. And now you're reducing that to 0, and you're able to it's just, I really like the Snowborn Scout as a chump blocker, and he does something from right from the very beginning. So I don't know. Like I just think that there's just a lot of options that these 2 guys can give you.
Oh yeah. There's not a ton of allies. There's a few in leadership that are also Rohan traded that you give access to.
Eothane is pretty good if you're doing that discard thing.
Yeah, he's the one actually that
he's expensive. He's 4.
He is expensive.
But
he's the one that's hardest to fit into Rohan decks,
right?
I think. But with this lineup, I think it's the easiest because he's a 4 cost, and so it goes down to 3, right?
Right.
And then you can just
resource already
accelerate to get there.
Theodred is already questing in order to get that extra that extra resource, so you can put it onto himself, and then your next the second round of the game you can get Eothane out, even if you're doing even if you're only playing a solo, even if you only have 1 leadership hero, even if Theodred's only your 1 leadership hero.
You could play Eothane round 2 guaranteed with only these 2 heroes.
right.
And he's great. He's got 2 attack, 2 willpower, and his responses after Rohan allies discarded from play ready him.
Right.
So many cards on this archetype. A Warden of Helm's Deep. Also, you could play him for 2
Right.
So second turn, if he's your only leadership, second turn, play him. Astonishing speed, fantastic event that affects
Right.
+2 willpower to all Rohan. Like they developed this trait. It got love very early on,
Right.
and then they continued to develop it. So it's awesome.
Yeah. It's totally awesome. Even the new hero Letherial, she is a when I say the new hero Letherial, I mean was just released in the what is it, Wrath and Ruin?
Yeah, like right around this time that episode was recorded, the pack was just released, maybe a couple days ago, made available.
Right, and so Letherial is an interesting. It's interesting. She's Gondor, but you can't play 4 heroes, but like,
yeah, she doesn't quite fit into this lineup because you need.
Right.
Well, actually, no. Somewhat, if another deck has Aomir, right? Letherial just says
right. It just right. If you're playing a if
multiplayer,
if you're playing multiplayer and somebody has, and that's the Rohan, and that allows you to pull allies out a ton, right? Like that's that's where Dan Prince, if I don't know if you know who Dan is, he's the Vision of the Palantir guy, Durin's father. He played Letherial at the Con of the Rings, and just being able to put allies into play, like that's crazy. Right? Like, oh, we need somebody to quest. Here we go. Let's go. Like it's just wild.
Yeah, also in the pack that just came out, some other friggin' awesome card came out. Is it Horn? Yeah, Horn of the Mark is a 1-cost spirit attachment that's unique, attached to a Rohan hero or Mary. It's restricted, but when a character leaves play, if that character shares at least one trait with the attached hero, you exhaust the Horn, draw a card.
Right.
So that card just gave Rohan like easy way to card draw now.
Right. Yep.
Like it's beautiful, right? Like first cycle and now last cycle they get cards, so it's fantastic. In Spear too, Spirit goes taking up a restricted slot can hurt, but if you put it on Theoden, Snowmane doesn't count as a restricted, as like part of its text for him.
Right.
So you could easily have Snowmane, give him the Horn, and have or you put it on Theodred, right? He doesn't need much attachments. He's Rohan.
Right.
It fits right on him. Like, no big deal.
Right.
NBD, David.
Right.
NBD.
NBD. I just think that this type of deck is just fun to play. Like I think that these are the types of decks that I like to play that are kind of gadgety but not horribly gadgety. Like it's the same thing all the time. The Rohan discard thing. Like you discard a card, you get it back, and this allows you to draw.
So with a deck that gets lots of resources, you can only use those resources if you draw cards, and now you have a tool to do that, aside from Ancient Matham and like a dozen other things to help you draw.
Right. This is kind of a thematic way to get the
right. And
cards.
So now you're drawing cards to spend the resources on. Yeah. I like to think of Rohan as like an opposite Sylvan. I know you love to play Sylvans, right? And Sylvans are about allies coming into play,
right,
and then going into your hand,
right.
Well, the Rohan goes into play and then into your discard.
Right, they die, right? I mean, that's the theme of them, is that they're dying, right? They're singing into victory, death. Like that's what they want to do. They want to gloriously sing their way through the whole thing. So. Yeah, I guess we should just very quickly just think about these cards with the new hotness and the contracts. As we're recording this, we really only know of 3 or 4 of the contracts, and I think that the best contract is probably, if we were going to do this, would be to play Theoden and Theodred with the Fellowship contract. Seems to be the most versatile of all the contracts too. I would guess that you're not going to want to play it with the Burglar's Turn contract.
Nope.
You're probably not going to want to play it 3 Hunters because you probably.
So far, what we know of the contracts, I think you raise a great point. So let's go through one by one. You think Fellowship might work?
I think Fellowship is the one that's going to be most likely to work. Although the problem is that if you're using that discard mechanic, you're gonna be flipping the contract back and forth all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if that's a huge deal because you'll be able to get 9 out all the time. Like
That's true.
you'll be able to kind of keep it at 9.
Yeah, you can definitely afford extra allies
Right.
with these two because there are some unique traded Rohan ones. We mentioned 3 or 4 on the show,
Right.
plus the ones I didn't mention. Burglar's Turn.
No, because I think you need the attachments, and Burglar's
Well,
Turn is just ruins the consistency of those things.
you know what though? Even though the attachments are super good, you could put them into. You're right, it does ruin the consistency, but then your deck will be chocked full of Rohan allies and chocked full of events that target Rohan, like mustering them and stuff.
Right.
Plus all the good spirit events like Hasty Stroke, Test of Will.
Right.
Uh, I think Burglar's Turn might be the most possible because I don't think Fellowship quite works. 3 Hunters is terrible because there's nothing is awful. It's like the worst one.
Right.
And there was another one spoiled called Council of the Wise, and that
Council of
only
the
lets you,
Wise. Right. One
lets you
copy of each card in your
of
deck.
each card.
I just have
And
these horrible nightmares of people bringing 200 cards into a play. It's not not a nightmare, but I just like bringing like one copy of each of the cards in their card pool and just say let's have fun with this.
we'll have our Council of the Wise episode. I'm quite excited for that contract.
Yeah.
So I don't think any of them really quite fit with Rohan, although we haven't seen all of them yet. But Burglar's Turn, at least to date when we're recording, I think actually has a. I've been struggling to make a Burglar's Turn deck, and you know what? Now it might maybe Rohan.
You just need a deck that doesn't care about the attachments that it has, right? You just
And Rohan's got some strong ones. We mentioned the Horn, we mentioned Snowmane, we mentioned Guthwin, Haircut. Like there's a ton of really great ones, and only some of those can go into the Burglar's Turn deck.
Right.
The mounts can't. But you get to make up for those with other great attachments, like out of sphere attachments. Glamdring, all the guarded cards.
Mm-hmm. Wait. Did you just say that you would put guarded cards?
Well, in a Burglar's Turn deck. Yeah.
Okay, go. Okay. Here's a case where Ted is going to play guarded cards.
Yeah. So, but yeah, if someone has, if you have a limited card pool, maybe only the core, and you maybe only have a couple of the sagas, these two work well together because they just help you get allies on the table quickly.
Right. Yeah, I think it's. I think Theodred is good for resource acceleration, anyways. But then he also helps his people, and it's good. So
yeah, Noble and Rohan have both been. And he's warrior too, which ton of attachments for that. If you want to buff him up with different tactics attachments, if you go that route too.
Right. Okay. Real quick trivia question. You ready for this?
I was born ready.
Okay. So there are a whole bunch of leadership and a whole bunch of spirit Rohan allies or Rohan characters in the game. There are only 2 Rohan characters in lore. Can you name them?
Okay, one of them is the minstrel guy.
Okay.
Gleowine,
right? That's good. Gleowine.
Yeah, he's and the other one is the hero Grima, I think.
Yes! You are phenomenal. Look at you.
So, which we didn't even discuss Grima, right? As the third one.
Right.
Which he could reduce your allies even further.
Right. That would be totally wild, right?
Yeah. You wouldn't be matching spheres. His lore, that'd be a unique deck to build because, as you said, there's the only other lore ally that's Rohan is Galeowin. That's it, which
Right.
would certainly fit in the deck and give you
Right, I was
cards.
gonna say,
Great.
yeah, if there's a way to fit something in the deck, it would be
Yeah, you have to find some other use for his lore resources. Maybe put songs in to, make him spirit or leadership or something, or just place lore events or
well,
you
you
know.
can use like a good harvest or something to,
Yeah, you give him the Song of Travel and away you go. Then
Yeah.
you're really dumping cards on the table fast. Allies will just every turn you be playing expensive ones.
That's interesting. I think that there should. We're getting way off topic at this point, but one last thing. I think that last and when Caleb was on the show in November, he said that there was a card, the last contract in the last pack. He can't wait for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be ignore the traits of all allies and give it the trait of one of your heroes.
That's your speculation.
Yes. So like you can you can give like any ally the Hobbit trait. I don't actually think that that's what it is, but I'm trying to think of like
it'd be fun, right?
Yeah, like
yeah, these contracts. I never saw anything in the design space that I considered this. Like not playing allies or only one hero, or I guess we didn't mention Grey Wanderer as a spoiled contract, but that
like if we're talking about couples, that eliminates Grey Wanderer.
Yeah, like they're interesting. So I'm excited to see what's coming, and it'll probably just continue to reinvent ways to build decks for
aeons and aeons.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
times.
Ted, I think we could stay up all night talking about couples in the game, but
we could.
I think we will cut it here. And we don't usually ring the couple. We haven't been doing that sort of thing. So
we just do thumbs up or thumbs down, right?
Right, thumbs up and thumbs down. So
or thumbs sideways.
Thumbs sideways if we don't like it. So Ted, Theoden and Theodred, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways.
Yeah. I think thumbs up because, like I said, it's real easy to build the deck around. You don't have to put much thought. Like if you just put in like half your deck Rohan allies, just go, like your deck will be fine.
Right. And it's any Rohan allies too.
Yeah, just anything that's in sphere, I should say, that match the spheres of your hero. Even if you do a 3-sphere deck, you can play 2-cost Rohan allies from easy to get on the table. So thumbs up.
Yep, and I am actually going to give these guys thumbs up too because of that same reason. I think that A, they're thematic, and B, like they just really work well together. And see, I think that it also doesn't necessarily trivialize the game; it just makes the game more fun. So,
well put.
Yeah. So, anyways, there it is, and thank you so much for joining us in Couples February, and we'll see you next time as we talk about more cards from the game. Have a great day, everybody. And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, feel free to search YouTube where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username Card Talk 2018. Or you can search the RSS feed cardtalk2018.libsyn.org for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at Card Talk 2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.